I have plenty of conversations with clients who are considering their next cartridge purchase. And the conversation will go something on the order of, well, I'm considering cartridge XYZ because people say it sounds like this and that, and I'm also considering cartridge ABC because other people say it sounds like so-and-so. But I suggest that people take opinions about what a cartridge sounds like with, well, let's just say a high degree of caution. Why would I say that it's not necessarily a good idea to ask people what they think a particular cartridge sounds like? But the answer is actually pretty simple. And that is because so few people have ever heard what an optimized cartridge, their optimized cartridge, even sounds like. How could I say that most people haven't actually heard what their cartridge sounds like? Well, having analyzed several hundred cartridges in our laboratory, we can see the degree to which, on the four angles of optimization, the degree to which they vary from being optimal. And again, to understand how we can know what the optimal angles really are, watch the series, The 7 Targets of Analog Optimization. When people reach out to me asking to send their cartridge in for analysis, I actually prefer it if they have had some time to listen to that cartridge first, so that they will then know when they get it back and they can hear it properly oriented on that head shell for the four angles of optimization, that they can then hear very clearly what they've been missing. And it always excites me to get those calls saying, and they're all pretty much very similar. They knew what that cartridge, or they thought they knew what that cartridge sounded like, but then when they heard it with the zenith error corrected, SRA, VTA, and azimuth corrected, it was a different cartridge to them. In many cases, they felt it was a different cartridge altogether. They were hearing things they weren't hearing before. So when people convey their thoughts on how a cartridge sounds like, my first thought is, well, how do you know how well it was optimized? And is that tone arm, this is a big one, is that tone arm's torque forces properly being managed? That's, of course, where the Wally skater comes in. In many cases, the answer is no. And these people could very much enjoy the sound of their cartridges. And I don't deny for a moment that the performance that they're getting could be fantastic. But in most cases, the vast majority of cases, people have not heard their cartridge optimally oriented on that head shell yet. I even had one reviewer who sent me one of his cartridges for analysis following his review of that cartridge. This cartridge had about a little over 6 degrees of zenith error. It needed about 3 degrees of VTA correction. I sent him the cartridge back with the corrective shim, and he called me back and he said, hey, you know, the 2 things that I didn't really like about this cartridge are gone. And if I had heard this cartridge this way at the time of the review, it would have been an even better review of this cartridge. Now, there is nothing wrong with this sequence of events, as I see it. Cartridge was reviewed, an assessment was made, it was later analyzed, it was heard again under more optimal alignment conditions, and a new impression was had about the performance of that cartridge. There's nothing wrong with this sequence of events. Most people will never get their cartridge analyzed and optimized. The job of a reviewer is to articulate what they hear from what they get from the factory. I think it's probably improbable to expect that any reviewer is going to get an analysis done before assessing the cartridge. They will take what they get and tell you what they hear. Nothing wrong with that. There's a utility to this process. So people's subjective impressions about what a cartridge sounds like, in the absence of them having had it optimally oriented on the head shell and that tone arm properly behaving, be careful of weighting that opinion too heavily. This plays out in actually the disparity of opinions multiple people will have of the same cartridge. Now, certainly reviewers will tend to do a much better job than the average Joe on setting up the cartridge. But when you get one person saying this cartridge has too much bass and the other one says it doesn't have enough bass, well, you know there's something isn't quite right. So I'm open to other perspectives that don't necessarily agree with what I'm saying here. The evidence I've seen suggests that the vast majority of people have not heard how good their cartridge really is. And if you haven't heard it in its optimal orientation, then how do you really know what it sounds like? What are you unaware of that you're giving up? So there it is, another week of a soundbite video, another one next week.